Hello and welcome to Cryptid by State, Virginia. Here we are the first Monday of the new month, and that means another entry into our Cryptid by State series. As of today's video, we are officially a quarter of the way through all the states so far. Before I started this series, I asked for people to vote for which states they wanted to see, and I used those numbers to adjust how videos were made. Well, since we are getting into a lot of states that had the same number of votes, I would appreciate you leaving a comment letting me know which ones you'd like to see next. I have been already adding suggestions for states in the comments onto the original votes as is, but I think it's best that I alert you to this. Well, the day has finally come where I reached the state that was, let's just say, a bit difficult. Not only was I able to uncover a mere handful of cryptids, but Virginia has an odd problem. It seems the state has an identity crisis, since Virginia tends to always be lumped in with West Virginia. Every avenue I went down in order to research this topic, the more I was met with West Virginia topics. So much so that I even saw a few places claiming Mothman was from Virginia. I'm not really sure what is going on with this, but it really makes things difficult. Normally at this point, I tell you about some of the more famous or well-known cryptids in the state, but to be honest, Virginia doesn't have any. So, without dragging this out more than I already have, please join me as we continue our cryptid family road trip, and let's discover if there is anything hiding in the state of Virginia. As much of our state's histories go, the Spanish first visited the area known as Virginia as early as 1540 and continued to do so up until 1607. Throughout those journeys, they landed in the area in an attempt to find gold or to locate the Northwest Passage. They tried to establish settlements, but it tended to always have disastrous results due to fighting and bloody wars. During the end of Spanish visitation, the English landed, and under the direction of Sir Walter Raleigh, they tried to establish a settlement on Roanoke Island. This was attempted 2 times, but both failed, and in fact the second colony is fairly famous for mysteriously vanishing without a trace. The first permanent settlement was found in Jamestown in 1607. Due to it being the first permanent settlement, Virginia is known as the birthplace of the nation. Virginia was given its name when Sir Walter Raleigh discovered that the Native American Socotan king was named Winginia. Raleigh sent news of this back to Queen Elizabeth, who was called the Virgin Queen, and she proclaimed the land would be known as Virginia. Jumping ahead in history, Virginia is one of the original 13 colonies, but it officially became the 10th area to become a state on June 25, 1788. It should be noted that it is also one of only 3 other states that is considered a commonwealth as well. As usual at this point, I would like to take a look at Virginia's very interesting flag. The flag you are seeing was officially adopted on April 30th, 1861, and it depicts the state's Great Seal of the Commonwealth placed on a solid blue background. The blue color stands for vigilance, truth, loyalty, perseverance, and justice. The white surrounding the seal is meant to represent peace and honesty. The seal itself was actually designed by 4 men on July 1st, 1776, but by 1912, many other versions of it existed, until it was decided that only one should be recognized as official. The seal shows the Roman goddess Virtus, who stood for virtue. She is depicted wearing a helmet and is considered to be dressed as an Amazonian. In her hand she is holding a spear in the left and cradling a sword known as Perizonium in the right, which represents authority. Virtus is standing victorious over a defeated despot or tyrant, and he has a scourge or many-tailed club in his right hand, a chain in his left, and a crown is laying on the ground near his head. The words Sic Semper Tyrannis are underneath the battle scene, and it means, thus always to tyrants. To make it clearer, it means virtue always defeats tyrants. The floral border was added in 1931 and it depicts red and green Virginia creeper vines. This whole seal was created to show Virginia's victory over British rule, and in fact it was designed using Roman themes to ensure it didn't resemble any of the seals found in England. Okay, that took a while and I bet I'm already getting a few comments about it. So let's move on to the cryptids. I am going to start our journey into the unknown with a creature that is unlike most other types that we normally discuss. I came across this encounter from my friends over at the National Cryptid Society, and I'll be including a link to the full article in the description. Around the year 2012, a patrol officer who was working at the Yorktown refinery came across a creature that is very odd. He described it as being the size of a large beaver, standing about 1.5 feet tall and 3.5 feet long. It had really long shaggy brown fur that covered its body. The hair was so long that it made the creature appear not to have legs, and it obscured any facial features that it may have had. What was really odd was this creature had 2 very long tails, and it was incredibly fast. Even as such, when it was seen running, it was said to wobble from side to side. This officer actually saw this creature on 8 different occasions, and he would encounter it in both broad daylight as well as the night. Many of the other workers reported seeing the same creature as well. Apparently this creature was seen swimming in the river that is around the refinery, as well as making its home in holes it had burrowed into the dirt near the bank. It really seems like it is a mix between a beaver, groundhog, and a rat. In saying that, I find it important to note that apparently chemicals used in the refinery may have gotten into the surrounding wildlife, and the officer assumes it possibly mutated one of the creatures. On various occasions, the officer tried to get pictures of the being, but he claims that it was just too fast. The patrol officer has stated that many people have reported seeing this thing as well, and in one instance it appeared only a few feet from one of the other officers. I should note that it was stated that the refinery has a nature preserve set up nearby, and the officer says he knows most of the animals that reside in there. But this creature was new to him. With this topic, I have read recent reports of a similar sized creature, but it is more of a rounded shape in other parts of Virginia. Not much is known about this other than it has shaggy brown fur and sharp looking teeth. Some have likened it to the creature found in the movie Critters, but I need to keep an eye on it to see if it develops into anything more than just hearsay. Moving from one hairy cryptid to another, we find a more familiar creature said to be found in this state. This cryptid is said to be a werewolf, but I'm assuming it is a dogman. The area of Henrico County has had stories of werewolf-like beings reported for hundreds of years, but all these sightings are fairly vague. The creature is said to stand between 6 and 7 feet tall, has grayish fur, and has been seen running on its hind legs, as well as on all fours. Not to mention that some have claimed to hear an eerie howling sound when the moon is full. That last part could simply be something else, though. A recent sighting occurred on October of 2011 at 10 o'clock at night, and it was reported to the police, but nothing was found. To date, most assume that these stories are just an urban legend or a hoax, but I have found a sighting that may make people question that. According to the encounter, a woman was walking her pit bull in the woods, when suddenly the dog started barking at something that the owner couldn't see. Without hesitation, the dog became startled and began pulling to run away from whatever it was seeing. This normally headstrong dog kept trying to run away, all the while looking over its shoulder as if it was afraid it was being chased. A day later, the woman returned alone to the site and found massive canine-like paw prints in the mud that were very much larger than any dog. While the validity of this creature residing in this area is questionable, it is said that another dogman does make its home in the Great Dismal Swamp National Wildlife Refuge. For years there were sightings of a hairy humanoid being roaming about the swamp. This thing is said to stand at around 8 feet tall, has dirty white hair covering its body, glowing yellow eyes, and a human-like face with a pronounced canine-like muzzle. Some assume it could actually be a version of the Bigfoot that has a dog-like muzzle known as the Gugly, but others feel it is simply a dogman. In 1902, a man named L. Frank Ames awoke to hearing a strange noise, and he went outside to check it out. It was then that he noticed a tall wolf-like figure with glowing yellow eyes standing not too far from him. Afraid of what might happen, he fired his pistol a few times at the being, but to no effect. Ames then tried to get his 6 hunting dogs to go after the creature, and all of them refused to move or attack. Luckily for Mr. Ames, the dogman chose to move on without trying to attack. Not long after this, another man named Henry Jordan saw the same creature standing there as well, and had just stared at the man for a while before leaving. With so many sightings, groups of hunters went out to the swamp to try to hunt the creature down, and on one occasion it is said that they were successful. However, unlike most cryptids we talk about, this entity isn't apparently the only one of its kind. A few days after the hunters had claimed to have killed the creature, a man named Edward Smith was unlucky enough to come across a not-so-passive version. Ed claimed the creature had visited his property many nights in a row, and in its wake it had killed some of his livestock and 7 of his dogs, with 2 of them being completely eaten. On that same night, he heard one of his remaining dogs howling from under the barn, and Ed went out to investigate, carrying a pistol. When he got to the barn, he found a white-haired dogman with yellow eyes trying to get a hold of his hiding dog. When it noticed Ed, it immediately sprung on top of him and started clawing at his body. Mr. Smith managed to drive the creature off by repeatedly hitting it with his pistol. He found that his weapon was unable to fire due to poor upkeep. What a time to find that out. Not long after this, a neighbor of Ed's named Whit Walker claimed the same creature had been terrorizing his farm and livestock for a few weeks. Stories like this sprung up throughout the years, and recently a boy claimed to have woken up to see a wolf-like face with yellow eyes staring at him through his bedroom window. It was assumed the creature was standing on its back legs since the window was fairly high up. The boy ran from the room, and apparently the creature moved on. Sticking with hairy cryptids, we move on to a sighting that isn't a dogman or strange mutated beaver. For years there have been sightings of a creature known as a devil monkey in Virginia, as well as other states. In some of these cases it can be ruled out as simply an escaped primate from the zoo, but the encounters in Virginia paint a different picture. These creatures are said to stand between 3 and 4 feet tall, have the face of a baboon, has razor-sharp teeth and claws. It has pointed ears and a long bushy tail that is described as looking like a beaver's. What really makes this odd is that it only has 3 toes on each limb, and its hind legs resemble a kangaroo. In 1959, a couple driving to their home in Saltville had a terrifying encounter with one of these creatures. On their way home, the Boyds, along with their daughter Pauline, were driving on a mountain road when suddenly a creature leapt from the forest and latched a hold of their car and pressed his face against the glass. The creature then kept up with the speeding car, all the while trying to get at the passengers inside. The family managed to finally get away, but once home, they found a set of 3-toed, deep claw marks in their car's hood and along the body. Pauline claimed that the creature she saw had tan fur with a white patch running down its chin to its belly, its back limbs were muscular like a kangaroo, and its front arms were shorter than the hind ones. Not long after the attack, 2 nurses were driving on the same road when a similar-looking creature reportedly tore the convertible top from their car. Later, a search party set out to try to find this strange being, but when everyone arrived at the site of the attacks, the tracking dogs refused to go into the woods. In both encounters, everyone managed to escape harm, but this monkey is said to be responsible for the death of quite a bit of livestock, as well as family pets. Many see this creature as being highly aggressive and territorial. In 1973, a man was driving on a road in the Marion area. At the time, he had the window down and his arm was hanging outside the vehicle. He claimed that one of the devil monkeys jumped out onto the road and charged at his car. As it passed by, it took a swipe at his exposed arm and caused some pretty deep cuts. In 1990, these cryptids were seen in Smith County, and in 2010 and 2014, they were spotted in Goochland County. With so many sightings, it seems that Virginia may have a high population of devil monkeys hanging around. As I end this video, I have to say that I was worried that this one would be shorter than the rest, but lo and behold, it is actually the longest one yet. Like in my previous videos, I couldn't get to all the cryptids that are said to roam about the state, so I'll include them here as an honorable mention. It comes as no shock to anyone that Bigfoot makes its home here, as it seems to in just about every other state. Although there was an interesting sighting where it was reported that a person actually saw one holding a baby Sasquatch. That is truly a rare sighting. I kept seeing reports of the snallygaster being found around Virginia, but it seems like this creature is mostly found in Maryland. I feel this being is more along the lines of myth, but it does have an interesting story along with another being that is said to actually hunt it. So, I guess look forward to that in the Maryland video. Virginia is said to have a form of thunderbird flying around. In a sighting in 2013, a man was driving in New Kent County when he saw a massive bird standing in the middle of the road. According to this sighting, this bird's head was higher than the car, and its wings were wider than the road when it took off. As it prepared to fly, the force from the wings caused a deafening sound. I was going to mention one of Virginia's most famous sightings, and that would be the Bunny Man. But from everything I looked up, it actually seems to be just a deranged human that dresses up in a rabbit suit. With this, I was going to include the Richmond vampire, but after doing a little digging, it appears this creature was actually a normal human being that was the victim of a mine explosion and was misidentified as something else entirely. I could have included the water-based cryptid known as Chessie on this video as well, but again, it also has much of its lore based in Maryland. So, look for that in the Maryland video. Like I mentioned at the beginning, Virginia really has an identity crisis, where if it isn't confused with West Virginia, then it is mixed up with Maryland for some reason. A good example of this is I kept seeing claims that Virginia has a goat man, but, as we all know, Kentucky and sometimes Maryland is famous for that one. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope I did right by Virginia. Again, I am sorry for a longer beginning section, but I always find flag meanings interesting, and I couldn't help but include the lost colony of Roanoke. Please remember to leave me a comment telling me which state you would like to see next, and I'll add them to the current tally. Just recently, Alaska moved up the list due to getting more votes. So, a state you want to see could move from currently being made in 2 years, up to in the upcoming months. You never really know. If you haven't yet done so, do please consider subscribing to my channel for more content like this. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you could share my videos with someone you know who may enjoy this type of genre. With that, be safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.